Many people begin the spiritual path with a sincere heart. They wake up earlier than before, chanting or praying while the world is still quiet. They keep a daily practice, even on busy days. They listen to Dharma talks, read spiritual books, and offer their time through volunteer work or service. From the outside, they look like good practitioners, disciplined, committed, serious about the path. Everything seems correct. The form is there. The effort is real. Yet beneath all of this, something does not feel fully at ease. There is still restlessness, still anxiety that comes and goes. Anger still arises quickly. Comparison slips in quietly. Disappointment and confusion return, sometimes even stronger than before. And slowly, a quiet sense of unease begins to grow inside. At some point, a very soft question appears. A question most people never say out loud. Why am I still suffering after all this practice? For many, this question feels uncomfortable. So instead of staying with it, they gently push it away. They tell themselves, my karma must still be heavy. I probably haven't practiced long enough. I just need to try harder. And so they add more effort, more chanting, more studying, more discipline. But very few people pause and ask a deeper, more honest question. Am I practicing sincerely, but in the wrong direction? This question is not about blame. It is not about judging effort or devotion. It is simply an invitation to look more carefully. This reflection does not criticize practice. It does not point to major mistakes or obvious wrongdoing. Instead, it gently reveals something much more subtle. Small misunderstandings hidden inside good intentions. Habits that look spiritual on the surface, but quietly lead the mind away from freedom. These are not mistakes that stop people from practicing. In fact, they often make people practice even harder. And that is why they are so difficult to see. This talk is simply an invitation to pause, to breathe, and to look honestly, not at how much we practice, but at how the mind is moving while we practice. Because sometimes, seeing just one small misdirection is enough to change the entire journey, not by doing more, but by finally walking in the right direction. Mistake number 1. Believing. Correct form automatically transforms the mind. Form is a door, not the destination. One of the most common mistakes in lay practice is confusing form with essence. Chanting, prostrations, and precepts are not wrong. They are doors. They help us enter the path. They give structure to life and create moments of stillness. In the beginning, chanting helps gather the mind. Prostration helps soften pride. Precepts help restrain coarse habits. All of this is correct. The problem begins when we stay at the door for too long and believe we have already entered the house. Slowly, without noticing, the mind begins to change its role. Chanting is no longer to observe the mind, but to feel that we are doing well. Prostration is no longer to release the self, but to feel like a spiritual person. Discipline becomes a quiet measure of how different we are from others. The form remains, but the direction has subtly shifted. As practice continues in this way, something very subtle happens. The ego does not disappear. It learns how to dress in spiritual clothing. We may no longer say, "I am better than others," but inside, a quiet comparison appears. When someone practices differently, irritation arises. When others do not follow the same discipline, judgment forms silently. A sense of moral superiority may not be spoken, but it is felt. And along with it comes a strange heaviness. We practice more, yet the heart feels tighter. We do good, yet the mind becomes more rigid. This is a clear warning sign. Not that chanting is wrong, not that precepts are wrong, but that form has begun to move ahead while awareness has stayed behind. The practice looks upright on the outside, yet inwardly, something is no longer softening. The core insight here is very simple, but very easy to miss. Form does not transform the mind by itself. Form is a tool. Awareness is what transforms. If the mind is not being observed, even the most disciplined practice can quietly reinforce the sense of self. We may become a more polite self, a more spiritual self, a more disciplined self, but still a self at the center. The Buddha never taught that correct rituals automatically lead to liberation. He pointed again and again to one place only, the mind. If awareness is absent, practice becomes a safe shelter that protects us from looking deeply. But when form and awareness walk together, practice becomes alive. Chanting becomes a mirror. Prostration becomes a release. Precepts become insight. The moment form is mistaken for the goal, the path begins to drift, quietly, politely, and without us realizing it. Mistake number 2. Making personal peace the goal of practice, the hidden motivation. After some time on the path, a very quiet motivation often appears. We may not say it out loud, but it is there beneath the surface. I practice so I can feel calmer, so I can feel safer, so life can finally become comfortable. This motivation is very human. Life is heavy, responsibilities are many, and practice feels like a refuge. For a while, it works. The mind settles, the heart feels lighter, and we think this must be the right direction. But slowly, something changes. The calm does not stay. Old patterns return, unpleasant emotions arise again, and when peace does not arrive as expected, disappointment quietly enters. From disappointment comes doubt. From doubt comes exhaustion. Not because the practice is wrong, but because the goal has shifted without us noticing. When personal peace becomes the goal, practice turns into a quiet evaluation. On days the mind feels calm, we believe we are practicing correctly. On days the mind feels restless or heavy, we believe something has gone wrong. Discomfort becomes a sign of failure. Difficulty becomes a problem to remove. We begin to judge our practice by emotional states, and without realizing it, we start avoiding anything that disturbs our inner comfort. A difficult conversation becomes a disturbance. A strong emotion becomes an obstacle. A challenging situation becomes a mistake. But the Buddha never promised a path of constant ease. He did not teach that awakening feels pleasant. He taught that awakening sees clearly. Clarity often feels uncomfortable because it touches attachments we have protected for a very long time. This is the key correction. Peace is not the goal of practice. Peace is a byproduct of right seeing. When clarity is present, peace comes naturally. When clarity is absent, peace cannot be forced. The path does not ask, "How can I suffer less?" It asks a different question. How does suffering arise in the mind? When this question becomes central, everything changes. Unpleasant emotions are no longer enemies. They become teachers. Restlessness shows where grasping is. Anxiety reveals fear. Discomfort points to attachment. We stop measuring practice by how good we feel. We begin to value how clearly we see. And even when peace has not yet arrived, there is a quiet confidence, because we know we are finally looking in the right direction. Mistake number 3. The ego does not disappear. It becomes refined. One of the most difficult truths to accept on the path is that the ego does not disappear with practice. It changes its language. It becomes softer, more convincing, more spiritual. Instead of saying, "I want recognition," it says, "I'm doing this for others." Instead of saying, "I want to be right," it says, "I'm speaking for the Dharma." And because these motivations sound noble, we rarely question them. The ego steps slightly back, hides behind good intentions, and becomes harder to detect. We no longer see it as ego. We see it as responsibility, as moral duty, as spiritual maturity. But the center is still there, quiet, unquestioned. And as long as the self remains the center, practice slowly bends around it, even when everything looks correct on the surface. There are clear signs that the ego is still quietly active in practice. We begin to compare practitioners, not openly, but silently. We notice who seems more devoted, who understands more, who practices correctly. Receiving feedback becomes difficult. Even gentle reminders can feel uncomfortable. A subtle defensiveness arises, not loud, not obvious, but present. We may not argue, yet something tightens inside. This is important to see, because a moral ego is still an ego. A disciplined ego is still an ego. An ego that speaks beautifully is still an ego. Freedom does not begin when the self becomes better. It begins when the self is no longer the center around which everything revolves. Mistake number 4. Counting merit and sacrifice. Another subtle trap appears quietly over time. We begin to count, not with numbers, but with feeling. Years practiced, good deeds done, sacrifices endured, things we gave up, things we tolerated. This counting does not speak loudly. It lives deep inside, and from it, a quiet conclusion forms. I have done so much. I have tried so hard. I deserve more peace than this. We may never say these words, but the feeling is there. When life remains difficult, a quiet resentment appears, not anger, but heaviness, a sense of being unseen, unrewarded, unbalanced, and comparison returns very gently, very quietly. The Buddha never rejected merit, but he warned clearly. Merit without wisdom becomes a burden. When good deeds are remembered, protected, and silently owned, they strengthen the sense of self. The more we accumulate, the harder it becomes to let go. True merit does something very different. It is done and released. No mental record, no inner ledger, no need to be compensated. When a wholesome action is finished and immediately let go, the mind stays light. When it is carried forward, even invisibly, the mind becomes heavy. The difference is not in the action, but in whether ownership remains. Freedom does not come from how much good we have done, but from how little we need to hold on to it. Only when merit is released does the heart truly open. Mistake number 5. Mistaking patience for suppression. One of the most common misunderstandings in practice is the way patience is understood. Many people believe patience means enduring silently, holding everything in, saying nothing, smiling through discomfort. This often looks peaceful on the outside, but inside, something very different is happening. Emotions are not dissolving. They are accumulating. Tension is stored. Unspoken resentment builds. Fatigue grows quietly. Over time, this pressure looks for an exit. Sometimes it appears as burnout, sometimes as sudden anger, sometimes as a quiet wish to stop practicing altogether. This is not patience. It is suppression, and suppression does not free the mind. It only delays the reaction. Many practitioners blame themselves here, thinking they are not patient enough. But the problem is not a lack of endurance. It is a lack of seeing. True patience in the Buddhist path does not come from forcing oneself to endure. It comes from seeing causes and conditions clearly, seeing how words arise from habit, seeing how situations unfold through many factors, not a single person or intention. When this seeing is present, the mind naturally softens. There is no need to hold things in. There is no need to pretend. Because when something is truly understood, it does not leave residue behind. Here is a simple test. If after being patient, you still feel owed understanding, owed recognition, owed fairness, then patience has not yet happened. Something has only been postponed. True patience leaves no inner record, no story of sacrifice, no sense of having endured. It passes through cleanly, and because nothing is stored, nothing later needs to explode. Mistake number 6. Trying to fix the world instead of seeing the mind. Another very common habit in practice is trying to fix discomfort by changing the outside. When unease arises, we look for a new environment, different people, a new routine, a different method, even a different spiritual path. At first, this seems reasonable. Conditions do affect the mind, but if this becomes our main strategy, we miss something essential. Circumstances do not create the mind, they reveal it. Discomfort does not appear because the world is wrong. It appears because something in the mind is reacting. When we constantly change the outside, we never see this reaction clearly. We move away just as the mind is about to show us where attachment lives. And so the pattern repeats in different places, with different people, in different forms. This is where a very important shift happens. The question changes from how do I avoid discomfort to how does my mind react right now? This shift changes everything. Discomfort is no longer an enemy. It becomes a signal, a tightening in the chest, a quick judgment, a desire to protect or withdraw. When these movements are seen early, they lose strength. Not because we push them away, but because they are no longer unconscious. Freedom does not come from creating a perfectly comfortable life. That is impossible. Freedom comes from awareness, meeting experience exactly as it is. When avoidance stops, learning begins. And when learning begins, even discomfort becomes part of the path. Not something to escape, but something that quietly leads the mind back to clarity. Mistake number 7. Calm in the shrine room, reactive outside. Many practitioners notice a familiar pattern. During formal practice, sitting in front of the shrine, the mind feels calm. The breath slows, the heart softens. Everything seems steady, clear, peaceful. But once practice ends and daily life resumes, something changes very quickly. A message arrives. A family issue appears. Someone says something unexpected, and the calm disappears. The mind reacts automatically. Words come out sharply. Judgments arise instantly. Old habits take over before we even realize what is happening. This does not mean the practice is fake. It simply means awareness has not yet learned to move with us out of the shrine room and into life itself. The practice is still contained. Life, meanwhile, moves on unconsciously, and the gap between the two is where suffering continues. Mindfulness is often misunderstood. It is not a special state to maintain. It is not a constant calm to protect. Mindfulness is remembering to notice what is happening in the mind when things are no longer peaceful, especially in moments of disturbance, when the voice tightens, when the chest contracts, when the urge to defend appears. These moments matter more than hours of calm sitting, because the mind does not reveal its deepest habits in stillness. It reveals them in friction. Mindfulness is not about staying serene. It is about recognizing movement as it begins. The moment awareness remembers itself in the middle of reactivity, something shifts, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to interrupt the old momentum. There is one simple practice point that changes daily life profoundly. Notice the first internal movement, before words are spoken, before actions follow, before the story fully forms. It may be very subtle, a tightening, a heat, a quick judgment, a need to protect. If awareness arrives even 1 second earlier than usual, the habit weakens. That small pause matters. You may still speak, you may still act, but you are no longer fully possessed by the reaction. And each time this pause appears, even briefly, the old pattern loses strength. Practice does not fail when we react. It deepens when we notice sooner than before. Over time, this remembering moves naturally from the shrine room into daily life. And life itself becomes the practice. Mistake number 8. Avoiding emptiness out of fear. Many practitioners quietly avoid the teaching of emptiness, not because they reject it, but because they fear it. They believe emptiness means becoming cold, detached, uncaring, less human. So they stay close to kindness, to morality, to good intentions, but stop short of wisdom. What is rarely seen is that without wisdom, compassion becomes exhausting. We care deeply, yet feel hurt easily. We give, yet secretly hope to be understood. We forgive, yet still feel the weight afterward. This is not a failure of compassion. It is compassion without emptiness. Emptiness does not remove warmth. It removes fixation. It allows emotions to be seen as movements, arising, changing, dissolving, rather than as something solid and personal. When fixation loosens, suffering naturally loses its grip. Emptiness is not a philosophy meant to be understood intellectually. It is something very close, very practical. In daily life, it begins with observing emotions carefully. Anger arises. It stays for a while. Then it changes. Then it fades. Anxiety appears. It tightens the body. It tells a story. And then, eventually, it dissolves. When we truly observe this, something important becomes clear. The emotion has no fixed core, no permanent owner, no solid self inside it. This seeing is emptiness. Not denying emotion, not suppressing it, but seeing its nature. And when the mind no longer fixates, suffering does not need to be pushed away. It weakens on its own. Wisdom does not make the heart distant. It makes the heart lighter. Mistake number 9. living as if death is far away. Another quiet mistake on the path is living as if there will always be time. Deep practice is postponed. Later when life is calmer. Later when responsibilities are lighter. Later when conditions are better. Practice becomes something we return to when convenient. But death does not follow our schedule. It carries no forms, no titles, no rituals, no spiritual identity, only the state of mind. Remembering this is not meant to create fear. It creates sincerity. When impermanence is remembered, priorities change. Small resentments lose importance. Old habits feel less worth protecting. Comfort becomes less convincing than truth. We begin to choose clarity over convenience, and practice stops being something we plan to do later. It becomes something we live now. Remembering impermanence does not make life darker. It makes it more honest. There is no need to pretend we have already let go when we have not. No reason to delay looking at what still binds the mind. When we know time is not guaranteed, we stop bargaining with truth. We listen more fully. We react more slowly. We choose our words with care, not because we fear death, but because we respect life. Impermanence gently pulls practice out of abstraction and places it firmly in this moment. Not later. Not when conditions are ideal. Now. And in this now, wisdom and compassion finally begin to walk together. Not as effort, but as a natural response to seeing things clearly. Mistake number 10. Dedication as words, not inner movement. Many practitioners are familiar with dedication of merit. After a good action, after chanting or service, a dedication is recited. The words are correct. The intention sounds noble. But often, dedication remains only at the level of speech. Something inside does not move. The action is completed, yet ownership quietly remains. A sense of, I did this, I gave, I practiced. True dedication is not about reciting formulas. It is about releasing ownership. It is an inner shift, from this is mine to this no longer belongs to me. When that shift does not happen, merit stays close to the self. And whatever stays close to the self eventually becomes a weight. Not because the action was wrong, but because it was never fully released. There are clear signs when dedication has not yet reached the heart. We begin to expect results. We hope life will respond differently. We hope difficulties will lessen. We hope others will change. Sometimes this expectation is very subtle, almost polite. A quiet sense of entitlement appears. I have done good. I have practiced sincerely. Things should be easier by now. When expectations are not met, disappointment arises. Not anger, but a soft heaviness. This is not a failure of dedication. It is simply a sign that ownership has not yet dropped. As long as someone remains inside to receive the result, giving is never fully free. And when giving is not free, suffering still has a place to land. When dedication is real, something very simple happens. Ownership drops. There is no one left to receive credit, no one waiting for compensation. The action is done and gone. Giving becomes effortless, natural, unforced. There is no need to remember what was offered, no need to measure impact. And when there is no owner, suffering loses its grip. Because suffering depends on someone holding, someone expecting, someone protecting. True dedication does not make us smaller. It makes the mind spacious, not empty in a cold way, but open. When nothing is held back, nothing needs to be defended. And in that openness, practice quietly completes its circle, not as achievement, but as release. Lay practice is not secondary, and it is not easier. There is no monastery protecting the mind, no fixed schedule separating practice from life. Responsibilities continue, relationships continue, pressure continues, and that is precisely why lay practice is real. Every moment of daily life is the practice ground. Every conversation, every reaction, every moment of tension or choice. The problem on the path is rarely a lack of effort. Most people try very hard. They are sincere. They are committed. The problem is direction. Effort applied in the wrong direction only makes the mistake stronger. Practice was never meant to make us special, pure, or spiritually superior. It was meant to soften the center that keeps needing to be protected. True practice does not decorate the self. It slowly takes away the need to defend it. We become less defensive, less easily offended, less invested in being right. We become less self-centered, not because we suppress ourselves, but because the center itself is no longer so heavy. And we become more honest about where attachment still lives, honest about where fear still reacts, honest about how often we still use practice to protect ourselves. This honesty is not harsh, it is gentle. Because when things are seen clearly, they no longer need to be forced away. The path does not demand perfection. It asks for sincerity. Sincerity to pause, to notice, to release, even slightly, what we have been holding. As this reflection comes to a close, there is no conclusion to reach, only a few questions to quietly stay with. Which of these 10 mistakes touched you most? Not the one that sounds right, but the one that felt close. And what is one small thing you can release today? Not a big transformation, not a dramatic change, just one tightening, one expectation, one silent demand. Liberation does not begin by doing more. It begins by seeing more clearly and holding less. Less identity, less ownership, less protection, and as the hands open, even slightly, the heart naturally follows. The path does not end here. It continues in the next breath, the next response, the next moment of simple, honest awareness. And that is already enough. As we come to the end of this reflection, there is nothing more you need to understand, and nothing you need to fix. If something in these words felt close, let it stay close. Not as an idea, but as a quiet noticing. There is no need to judge your practice. No need to correct yourself. Just notice where the mind still holds, where it still protects, where it still hopes to gain something. Even seeing that is already part of the path. You don't need to let go of everything. Just one small thing today. One expectation, one comparison, one silent demand. And if nothing feels ready to release, that's also okay. Awareness itself is never wasted. Thank you for walking this moment with me. The path continues in the next breath, the next response, the next quiet moment of honesty. Until then, be gentle with yourself and keep looking softly, sincerely, without hurry.